Well, now, tell me, it's one thing for a long-distance truck driver to get into the vehicle and be tested in this way, but do you test him at frequent periods along the route? He might be driving, say, from Cape Town to Johannesburg.
Yes, we do, David. As I said earlier on, we have what we call a random test. That random test will periodically, it depends on the sequence, and is also, all the features on our systems are configurable to suit the fleet manager's requirements or the operational requirements. If you wanted to ask for a random sample every 15, 20 minutes or within an hour, it will do so. As a matter of fact, it is a system which will also guarantee that the driver is brought to alert. What it does automatically, David, is it changes driver behavior. They know that if they do consume any alcohol, and I mean any alcohol, it will be registered in the memory. And at the periodic dates or at the periodic intervals, the fleet manager can download the data. Forget if he's caught drinking, and you can actually download the data, analyze the data, and say, hold on, although you haven't failed, you are still impaired. So the drivers change their behavior very quickly. They know, first of all, they mustn't arrive at work with alcohol in their body. And it is our duty as well to make sure we train the drivers to understand the implications of consumption of alcohol and the reaction to the body of the different bodies. So it's not just an alcohol device. It's a complete package that goes out there.
Manuel, I've got two further questions for you before we wrap up this segment of the program. I suppose the first is, have you linked up with any of the tracking companies, the companies that try to prevent your vehicle from being hijacked and that sort of thing? It seems logical to me that there would be some sort of connection.
Yeah, we have, and let me put it this way. Our system is very, very compatible to either be sold in a standalone situation, or it can be sold into integration into a tracking system, or it can be sold into a fleet management system. It's very versatile. As a matter of fact, David, we manufacture tracking devices, tracking and recovery devices. That is one of our specialities.
And I suppose my second question is, do you think that, is there any possibility that this sort of equipment will, in time, become standard on, say, new vehicles or on vehicles that are driven by people under a certain age, etc.?
Let me put it this way. I've teamed up along the way. I've actually taken the steps in which to team up with non-government organizations such as SAD, which is South Africa Against Drunk Driving. I'm establishing a relationship with Arrive Alive. And our objective is to possibly, at some stage in the future, to canvass and to actually try and get government to introduce what we have overseas, what we call commercial programs. In other words, every truck that transports dangerous goods needs to have one. Trucks that are carrying doing work for government must have one. Buses that carry school children are compelled to have one. The other program we would love to see introduced is what we call the offender program. In other words, if an individual is caught drink driving, generally the courts will remove his license. Now you'd re-endorse his license if he fits one of these devices and attends the correctional, what you call SANCA, sort of psychological preparations and so on. Because having a device will actually eradicate the person from the road as a drunk driver, and secondly, allow him to be financially active again.
Now, tell me, what sort of response do you get from the short-term insurers on a piece of equipment of this kind? Do they reduce premiums, etc.?
That hasn't taken place, but I had just recently a meeting with one of the major insurance companies in this country, and they were quite impressed at the ability of a device to actually reduce the bottom line to fleet owners. Again, they stressed to Emmanuel, a device of this nature that can stop us from destroying a 2 million, we'll underwrite it anyway. So yes, I am working in that line, and I'm talking to the big insurers, and there is quite a big interest to reduce or to underwrite, as they say, the vehicles.
Well, I'm not at all surprised to hear that the insurers would be particularly interested in this, because, presumably it would save them a huge amount of money.
That's correct.
Same.
A little bit of corporate image as well, if you look at it.
Same thing applies, of course, to the owners of companies that are involved in long-haul transport, particularly petrol, chemicals, and that sort of thing.
It's like I said, David, it saves the embarrassment, it enhances the corporate image, it changes driver behavior, you no longer have a risk on your hands. I'm not just doing that for the sale of the sales side, but it's actually a fact.
Well, Manuel Ferreira of PFK Electronics, Business Development Manager for Alcaloc, it's been fascinating to talk to you, and I'm really grateful to you for coming on the program this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.